As you arrive, we should have you muted and your video is off so that we can see the presenters. And we'll also note up at the top of your screen, you'll see it'll either say everyone who's talking, active cameras hide. If you click on those arrows, you can just see the active cameras, or you could just see who's talking, or however you want. All right. So why don't we go ahead and get started? Welcome to the 6th webinar the last 3 months. We've had a fun time in shelter in place, right? and during COVID, having these webinars have been really helpful, I think, for many. So we appreciate everyone attending. So some housekeeping, everyone is muted and your video should be off. And we have the chat feature, so if you have questions, just put them in the chat feature and then I will moderate with our presenters. We're videotaping this webinar and it will be available in the next few days. So if you know of anybody that wants to see it, or if you were only able to make part of it, it will be available. SWANA will be also offering 1 CEU credit. So if you'd like a credit, let us know and send us, Bina or myself, an email. This is actually, so we had a series of 6 webinars. This is going to be our last webinar. We feel like we've run the gamut with all the conversations. The attendance has been really fantastic and we were excited. We've been very excited about that. Moving forward, we're going to be looking forward to the CRRA conference and all what the virtual reality of our conference this year will hold in August. So with that said, I'd like to move on to introducing our speakers. Our first speaker is Kim Braun. She is the Environmental Programs and Operations Manager for the City of Culver City since 2016. She was responsible for waste recycling and organics collections programs citywide, a 500 ton per day transfer station, citywide stormwater projects and programs, and wastewater services. Prior to her current position, Kim was the Resource Recovery Recycling Manager for the City of Santa Monica and served in the capacity since 2009. Kim began her Santa Monica career as the Materials Recovery Superintendent with the Solid Waste Management Division in 1997. Prior to relocating to Santa Monica, Kim worked for the Mercer County Improvement Authority in Trenton, New Jersey as the Director of Operations. Kim was responsible for the daily operations of a 1,200 ton per day transfer station and countywide recycling programs for 100,000 single family residents. Kim is an active member in both SWANA and SoCal SWANA, serving as a Sustainable Materials Management Technical Division, past Director for SWANA, as well as a public board member for SoCal SWANA. Our next speaker will be Dave Vaughn, and Dave works for Athens Services. He has more than 30 years of experience and has held progressively responsible management positions in the recyclables, organics, and solid waste collection and processing industries. He recently joined Athens Services as an Executive Vice President overseeing post-collection. In his role, Dave provides strategic guidance on short-term and long-term recycling and organics collection, processing, and recovery, disposal, avoidance, and diversion goals. Athens Services, Los Angeles County's largest private family-owned and operated waste and recycling company, proudly serves more than 30 municipalities in the region. And our last presenter is Colleen Foster. Colleen Foster is with the City of Oceanside. She's established record of experience with the public and private sector for over the past 15 years, is highlighted by multiple achievements as it relates to zero waste, food recovery, stormwater, and environmental compliance, climate action, program development, outreach, marketing, and legislative advocacy. Ms. Foster's personal and professional endeavors feature her commitment for positive leadership and stakeholder engagement with an intense dedication to actively promoting sustainability, civic duty, and conservation with a diverse array of communities. Ms. Foster is the president of the CRRA and a Southern California board member of the California Product Stewardship Council. So with that, let's go ahead and share our screen with Kim, and Kim will take us away. She's going to talk about what's been going on during COVID and her re-entry strategies. So Kim, take it away.
Great. Okay, I think you're going to share my screen back.
Yes, you're shared now. You're the presenter.
Okay, let's see. There we go. Sorry, give me just a second. And, okay, we should be ready to go. All right. Look at that. Can everybody see the screen now? Hello? Yes?
You are good, yes.
Okay, good. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kim Braun, and I'm very happy to be invited to this webinar today to talk about COVID-19 a little bit and Culver City's plans for re-entry as a result of this pandemic. So, just to give you a little bit of information about the city of Culver City, we are an exclusive franchise for the city, so that means we are the exclusive hauler. We collect waste, recycling, and organics for all residents and for all commercial businesses citywide. So we have front loaders, inside loaders, rear loaders, and other vehicles to help us do that. We also collect all the construction and demolition debris generated within the city. And as was stated before, on the right-hand side, you can see that we have a 500-ton per day transfer facility as well. So we were quite successful prior to the pandemic in Culver City with our collections and with our enterprise fund. But what has happened and what we've noted since pandemic has arrived is that our residential waste has really increased quite a bit. Our residential recycling has stayed about the same, but significantly contaminated, as well as our organics. Our commercial waste has decreased, and our construction and demolition waste has significantly decreased. So during the pandemic, what happened to Culver City was that our processing facility for our recyclables closed. And I'm sure that's happened for other cities and other private haulers across the country. What did that mean? At this time, through the month of May, 1,000 tons of recyclable materials have been landfilled. In organics, 890 tons up through May 31st has also been landfilled due to the level of contamination. How is that going to affect Culver City? Well, it's definitely going to affect our diversion rates for fiscal year 1920 and calendar year 2020. And also our compliance for the mandates of AB 341 and AB 1826. So during the pandemic, as you can see, I'm giving you a slide here of the revenues that are part of our enterprise fund for sanitation. So if you look in the second column, I've listed the revenue that we receive on a monthly basis on the average from July to February, pre-COVID-19. And for commercial accounts, average was about $642,000 a month. In March, we started closing down around March 16th. So we still had some revenues in there, but you could see the decrease. Now look what happened in April, and then May, and June, we're keeping just about the same. So, because we're not sure what the revenue base is going to be as businesses start opening up. So the total monthly loss for us on the average is around almost $63,000. And so far counting 4 months, $250,000 in commercial business of lost revenue. For roll-off, that's our construction and demolition debris. As you can see, we had 248,000 on average. And look at April, when everything just about stopped. It was like $166,000 in revenue, that's it. It's good to say that in May, we started picking up again, but once again, we've lost over $200,000 in revenue there, making it a total in 4 months of over $450,000 in revenue sources for operating the entire collections division. Another thing I'd like to show what's happened during this pandemic is the volume trends in the commodities. And as you can see, our trash generation in July was 3,500 tons, yet April, 2,700 tons, even though the residential waste generation increased, we've lost all of those tonnages from the commercial businesses. It's organics about the same, and with recycling, it's decreased in March, but went back up in April and is again going up in May. So during this pandemic, we have our enterprise fund, which is residential through parcel tax, and that's basically paid in November and April. So the residential end of it, you know, the revenues basically came in and stayed the same. However, with commercial and multifamily 5 units or greater, it's billed monthly through the city. We have a reserve. It's not what our finance director wants. She wants a 25% reserve in our fund, which we do not have. So in order to try not to use our reserve funds during this time of lost revenues, here's what the city of Culver City has implemented. We have 7 vacancies currently that are not being filled during this fiscal year 1920. Because we landfilled 1,000 tons of our recyclable material rather than send it to the processing facility, we saved $46,000. Our contract for recycling is $80 per ton that the city must pay to have it processed. Our organics, because of the contamination levels, went to the landfill, saving us over $45,000 because it currently costs the city $84 a ton to process. We were going to purchase a new pedestrian litter truck, but we're not doing that now. And our transfer station needs to have a push wall built, a new one. And that engineering estimate is about $400,000, which of course we've put on hold as well. So our projected revenues, as you can see on this screen for fiscal year 1920, including the loss of revenue during this time, is about $17 million. However, our projected expenditures is also $17 million. And the reason why we're coming in just slightly under our revenue is because of all the savings that we've implemented, as I just shown in this slide before. What's happening now, re-entry, the city of Culver City has done so many different things to try to help the economy at this point in time, with rent control being implemented, as well as something for the businesses. Culver City has a very big downtown with a lot of restaurants, and we have Sony Studios and Culver Studios, and HBO has just moved in, and Amazon has just moved in. So with the restaurants coming back into business, it'd be a great help for the overall city revenue. So what they've done is, I'm not sure if anybody is familiar with the city of Culver City, but on Culver Boulevard in the downtown area, they are closing the north side of the street completely to vehicular traffic. And they're going to issue all of these restaurants and other businesses temporary use permits without a fee so they can expand their dining and even their merchandising out into the street. That's starting to happen now. And it's good for everyone because we can see on a daily basis that each businesses are calling us to reinstate their accounts. So with re-entry, how are we going to begin to deal with what's happening with accounts coming back online? Several things have happened to us. The revenue projections that I presented before will remain the same. We had created a rate study. We were going to go to council this year to ask for a rate increase. That has been postponed because we can't ask a business to pay more for trash if they're not getting their entire return on investments at this time. We may have to hit into the reserves of our enterprise fund until our commercial accounts increase. And as the construction and demolition accounts increase, we can begin to start hiring drivers. As you can see on the right-hand side, we have 4 driver vacancies. We are permitted to hire, but not all 4 at this time. It will be as our accounts increase and we need to add additional vehicles and routes, we will hire drivers. The budget did cut 1 full-time driver position for next year. We do have a compliance inspector in Culver City. That inspector would go around and actually look in residential containers and commercial containers and discuss with some outreach materials and education about contamination and what should be placed into the correct bins and automated containers. That position has been put on hold. We cannot hire, so what does that mean for Culver City? We have to become creative and find other ways to outreach to our residents and businesses about the contamination levels for both recycling and organics. We have a laborer position that will not be filled. The laborer is someone at our transfer station that directs traffic and helps clean up and pulls hazardous materials that may be found in a load out of the load before it goes to the semis. Our transfer station push wall may not be constructed in fiscal year 2021. The litter collection vehicle we were still looking forward to probably will not be purchased. And we have a few contracted employees that will not be rehired in fiscal year 2021. So we're working very hard to try to, adapt to the new normal. Our staff has been very healthy. We've set protocols in place for them, and drivers and our front loaders feel much safer since we installed cab dividers in the front cab. So there is a plexiglass divider between the driver and their helper on the passenger side. So I'm glad to hear that we are staying safe. We're still here to accommodate the city as much as possible. And this concludes my presentation on how Culver City is coping with the re-entry from COVID-19. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. We have a few questions for you. First off, which processor closed and are they open now?
Pardon me?
Which processor was closed and are they open now?
Yes, our processor was Allen Company in Baldwin Park. I'm not sure if they're open at this time because they're not accepting municipal recycling.
And then does Culver City anticipate being able to comply with SB 1383 requirements on oversight, monitoring, and enforcement, in addition to diversion requirements with your new cuts in place on staffing and budget?
Yes, we are going to be able to comply. We're utilizing some of our field supervisory staff to take on them duties, as well as our drivers if they see a bin, especially on the commercial end and multifamily, large multifamily contamination. They're going to report it so that we can send out letters and advise. In addition, I have to say Culver City is very fortunate to receive a grant from CalRecycle last year for almost $500,000. And what we're going to do is, and what we have done so far, is we purchased a refrigerated vehicle. We have memorandum of understanding with the Culver City Unified School District. Once schools return, we will be collecting their lunch food that was not consumed. It's a grab and go only. And we will be delivering that food to our senior center once it's open, and the teen center and the after school programs run by the city. And in the spring semester, it will go to West LA College as well for their food pantry. So we will be able to comply with the food recovery, and probably one of the first municipalities that's actually putting a food recovery program in its operation.
I'm curious, with you just finishing the 2020-2021 budget, are you going to have to take a look at the budget again mid-year just because of all of the unknowns with what's been going on with reentry and COVID?
Absolutely. Actually, the finance director and I have a monthly meeting now, so we can see the trends of the increases in the accounts and the volume of trash and additional expenditures. So it will be on a monthly basis, and then if we can add or rehire into our compliance inspector and labor by mid-year, then we will go back to council and ask for authority to do that.
Can you clarify what is your staffing budget and population rate payer ratio?
Not at this time. I'd have to figure that one out totally. So I can't answer that for you now, but I can send some information to you to share with others later on.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kim. You were amazing. Appreciate your time today and explaining all of that. Kind of crazy times for sure. So appreciate your knowledge and sharing of information on that. So thank you. And then we're going to go ahead and pass the torch to Dave. Dave with Athens Services, and he's going to give us a debrief on how things have been going during COVID and what their reentry looks like as well. So Dave, take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I hope this finds everyone healthy and safe as we move through these craziest of times. My hope here is just to kind of show you where we started, kind of how things got rolling for Athens early on in this pandemic, where we are today and where we're headed. As everyone kind of recalls, the dates are easy to remember. At least for us, it was St. Patrick's Day. We ceased all of our hand sorting operations. We did so for the protection of our employees and really the unknown at that time as to where this material was at, how people were catching the virus, and all those things were still very early on in the process. As we learn more about personal protective equipment and that necessary to protect our employees, as well as maintaining social distancing and keeping the health and welfare of our employees front of mind, mid-April, we opened up our C&D processing facility in Sun Valley, which allowed us to start to process and sort, provide diversion. I'll back up a little bit. We maintained our mechanical sorting at all of our facilities, so we're still providing diversion at a minimal level, but without the hand processing for for recovery of positive sort. As we move forward into April, we started to ramp up our Sun Valley facility, which is primarily a single stream commercial and residential processing operation. And those things are going well. Again, everything was focused on maintaining employee safety, ensuring social distancing, personal protective equipment, and really making sure that we were doing all the right things not to spread or be a participant in spreading the virus. As we sit here rolling into June, we started to ramp up our industry facility. And our industry facility is a mixed waste processing facility, and so we're being very careful there. It's a very large capacity facility, but in order to maintain social distancing, we're being extremely careful and making sure that we're rotating shifts and doing all those things necessary, again, to protect the employees. We're doing a lot of mechanical sorting in that facility. We also have an organic separation press there, which allows us to send some liquids to AD, as well as creating some fine material. As we look forward and rolling out into July, we are going to ramp up our operations yet again, as some will may recall or recognize some of the jurisdictions in Southern California that we serve opted to go to one pass for a period of time. And so by going to one pass, we're now starting to separate those materials out again at the collection process with our hauling teams. And really that's taking an opportunity for us to have to look at how materials being picked up, how it's received, because unfortunately, when you do a one pass type operation, you are sort of inviting the customer to possibly contaminate the product. So our teams are working strongly to make sure that we are able to reduce that impact and get back to stable state or normalcy as much as normal can be during this time. Again, every time we want to make sure we're focusing on the safety of our employees and what is happening in our industry. I want to give a shout out to all the haulers out there and all the garbage and recycling folks, it being National Recycling and Solid Waste Workers Week. So I appreciate all of you do to make sure that things are taken and put away in the proper order. Just quickly on volumes, I'm going to just probably echo what all of you already know. And the reality is we saw a decrease in commercial business. We're starting to see some of that come back. But really the impact has been on our residential side, primarily in an increase in volumes there. Also folks who have had an opportunity to be at home. Our bulky item services has also increased. People getting some home projects done while they're shelter in place. So with that, Athens has been, we've been very pleased with how we've been handling the process with our employees and continuing to maintain a health and safe workplace. And at the end of the day, we're hoping that this thing gets kind of somewhere normal in the next couple months. But the reality is I don't think anybody truly knows, when that's going to happen. So as we look at, the fluidity of the situation, we continue to monitor and maintain that in our post-collection processes on a daily basis. And we want to continue to provide, disposal, avoidance, recycling, recovery, and diversion to the highest level. But with that, we also want to maintain that protection for our employees. So with that, I'm open to questions. I know that was pretty quick, but reality is we're just trying to get through this like everyone else is. Tracy?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. We do have one question for you. Is your Sun Valley facility sorting recyclables again?
Yes, we are. We are open 2 shifts. Again, maintaining social distancing and employee protection. We're not running as we were pre-COVID, but we are running and processing and sorting and really ramping that system back up, and we'll do so over the next probably 8 weeks.
Have you noticed a difference in what you're able to capture and recycle compared to what goes through residuals with making these changes with COVID? We do constant analysis of that. I think what we've seen, at least in the initial phase of the recyclables that we're receiving more of them because folks are at home. And so we're seeing not only is the garbage side seeing that impact, but we're also seeing it on the recycling side as well. And so, again, I think we're going to continue to review the residuals and continue to see what type of materials that are kind of making it through the system that may not have been there in the past. Are you noticing an increase in gloves and masks and other, type things with regards to being placed in either the recycling or more in the trash that's kind of either tanglers or just more of an inconvenience?
We're not seeing as much of that in the recycling portion. We are seeing it in our mixed waste facility and the garbage side. And so we're seeing an increase in that, especially the latex gloves and those type of items that folks are using or have been using to when they're out socializing or going to the grocery store and those type of things. So a small, modest increase. It takes a lot of those to really make a difference in a system, but I prefer people to dispose of those versus what I'm sure we've all experienced, folks throwing them in the parking lot, right?
Exactly. Are there any practices that have changed as a result of the pandemic that will now be permanent?
Well, I think there's lots of things that have changed. Probably primarily for us, we mandatory temperature test everyone when they come to work in the morning. That's obviously something that wasn't pre-COVID. We plan on maintaining that piece in order to protect their safety. The other piece is really just upping our PPE game. In processing, most of the time folks would have to wear longer gloves. We're going to more shields and increasing the level of protection that they receive. So PPE has now become, personal protective equipment has really become a focus for those who are having to handle material, and trading out gloves often, make sure they're wearing double layers, make sure they're wearing their N95 mask, just a lot of things that we were always focused on PPE, but now we're hyper focused on ensuring that, folks are wearing it for their own protection.
Great. Can you explain how One Pass works? And does that material go over a mixed waste sort line to recover materials? And I'm assuming was that the city or county of LA that was doing that?
Yeah, the county of LA was doing that. A One Pass is where we use one truck to pick up all 3 materials if it's a 3-cart system, or 2 materials if it's a 2-cart system. And while it goes over a line, we were not doing any positive sorting of that material. So anything that we got was recovered mechanically.
So you were taking it to the MRF, and it was still being processed through the mechanics of the MRF?
Yes.
Okay. Have orders and/or prices for commodities improved due to reduced supply because some haulage processors exited the market during COVID?
If we'd have had this call a month ago, I would tell you that we saw an increase in OCC. However, in the last 4 weeks, we've seen a decrease in cardboard and as well as plastics. So unfortunately, the things that drive that market, plastics is obviously in the petroleum world, and things happening with oil prices and other things have driven those prices down. Paper has maintained itself. It's not a great market, but you can still move that product. The real fluctuation happened in our cardboard markets, and they're better than they were pre-COVID. But there was a point there in April that they were starting to really climb, and maybe looking a couple years back type pricing.
Wow, that's great. Well, thank you for your time, Dave, and presenting. We really appreciate it. It looks like we don't have any more questions for you yet, but take a look in the chat box in case anybody has any questions through the end of the webinar. And we're going to go ahead and move on to, yeah, thank you. We're going to move on to Ms. Colleen Foster with the City of Oceanside. So we've talked about city collections and processing and all of that. Now we're going to move to program implementation in a perfect storm. So Colleen, you can take it away.
Great. Hi. Can you hear me? See me? Everything's good?
You're good.
My network just crashed for a second, like 2 minutes ago. So I was trying to fix it. Again, thank you so much for having me on this webinar. I've really enjoyed these webinars throughout this whole process of COVID. So I am the City of Oceanside's Environmental Officer. I've been with the city for just under the past 15 years. I've had the fortunate opportunity, I think we have another presentation posted up there, but okay. I've had the fortunate opportunity, or unfortunate, any way you can say it, to roll out a mandatory commercial food scraps program right before COVID hit. So essentially the City of Oceanside renegotiated last year with Waste Management to set up a comprehensive food scraps recycling program for all commercial customers. This was the program was developed to be in compliance with not only AB 1826, but to actually be in compliance with SB 1383 in regards to commercial requirements. Since we're building this program in 2019-2020, we felt that we might as well move forward and set it up for success with the regulations coming in 2022. So we amended the contract and we set up a robust rollout. Essentially with AB 1826, we needed to provide comprehensive food scrap recycling services to all commercial customers. So we didn't really set it up in a way for phasing in, tiered approach, volunteer approach, all of that has now become antiquated with existing regulations. So if you move to the next slide, Tracy. Our pre-COVID rollout for our mandatory commercial food scraps program was kind of an expedited rollout plan. Essentially, part of the contract amendment, we did have to increase rates across the board to all commercial customers. We also spread the rate increase across at a minor level to residential customers, because we did provide some enhancements in regards to litter abatement, public services, as well as a residential recycling program. So January of 2020, we basically implemented the new amendment and the food scraps rollout program. January and February, that part of the rollout was focused on education and outreach, in which waste management and the SCS team and Go to Zero, we basically essentially visited every single business across the city. That was approximately 3,000 businesses at the time. We provided education, we met with them face to face, we right-sized services so that they would be ready for delivery of food scrap services starting in March. We chose to do an expedited rollout because essentially we wanted to have an equitable environment. We not only wanted to be in alignment with all of the regulations for mandatory commercial food scrap recycling, but we also wanted to ensure that if we are increasing rates across the board, that if a customer is paying for the service, then they have a right to that service, essentially. We did set up our rate system to incentivize organics recycling, food scrap recycling, as well as recycling. Organics and recycling is set at 75% of the landfill rate, so that helped definitely. But essentially, we set ourselves up for a rollout that would take approximately 4 months. It was literally about 2 months of education and outreach and in-person technical assistance, and then 2 months of delivery. So we were going to deliver containers and bins on the back end and front end recycling kits within a 12-week period. And that 12-week period not only included the delivery of the bins, it also included our zero waste technical assistance team visiting each of the businesses with the actual bins. We weren't just going to dump bins on businesses. We were going to walk in, let them know your bin's getting delivered today. You know, can we help you on placement? Is all of your staff ready? We've got all of these resources and materials. So there was a lot of face-to-face and interaction, and we did that to ensure success with the program and obviously mitigate contamination and to help best serve our businesses. So prior to COVID, we had a plan. It was working out. It was definitely an expedited program. The majority of organics recycling systems that are in place to date have been able to mature over several years. They did rollouts over several years, starting with voluntary based in the beginning. This rollout was very different and very unique in that it was absolutely mandatory. We allowed for no exemptions, and we compressed that rollout period to just 12 weeks. So we had all the businesses signed up for services. For the most part, we probably had literally a 95 to 98% rate of acceptance and support. We only had a handful of customers that continued to refuse to take the service, didn't want to pay for the services, or outright just didn't believe in organics recycling, as well as big government or state regulation. So, you know, the fact that we only had a handful of customers out of 3,000 businesses, I consider that success. On March 16th, we had Waste Management had all of the infrastructure in place. This contract amendment is a $2.7 million contract amendment to provide for food scrap recycling services, as well as education and outreach and support. We were ready to go. All of the bins were ready. Everything was in storage. We had the front end recycling containers set up for delivery. And then COVID hit. COVID hit on a massive scale in our region on March 16th. That is essentially when the county shut everything down. Everyone was ordered to self-quarantine, businesses were closed. Well, that was the day Tracy and her SCS team were to be out visiting businesses, and that was the day Waste Management was going to be delivering bins. So literally within 45 minutes of that morning, I was on the phone with waste management, our route managers. We stopped all deliveries and completely stopped our program. So since March 16th, we've spent the past, we are at 3 months now, we've spent the past 3 months redefining whether we would roll out food scrap services, whether we would continue with this program, if we can even back up the program. If we've been charging an increase in overall rates since January, you know, how do we really back that out? Is that really the way to go? And ultimately, that doesn't help us in regards to compliance for state mandates. And ultimately, we had already sunk a significant amount of investment into the system as a whole, as well as the infrastructure. So all of those conversations have been taking place not only with waste management, SCS, but all the way up the chain through our own city management and our city council. So if you can move on to the next slide, Tracy, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. So over the past 3 months, we've had to identify our new path forward. How do we move forward with food scrap recycling? How do we move forward with this rollout? How do we do it in such a way that it does not adversely impact our businesses, but can be seen as a way to help support our businesses? So we took a 4-month rollout program that was mandatory, and we have now developed a year-long rollout program starting in August to be completed by next July. That was a very difficult decision for us. Again, you know, it was hard enough and all the effort put towards developing the original rollout. It's extremely challenging to now face a full year rollout, to change my staffing resources and change what are our priorities to be able to accommodate a year rollout. A year versus 12 weeks of rolling out a program is a huge significant difference to our team and to the waste management team as well as SCS. So, but it's the only way forward. We really needed to provide a rollout that was gonna absolutely support our businesses. We were challenged with questions on, there are many businesses, there are several hundred businesses in our community that can actually see cost savings by the delivery of their organic services because they had been appropriately right-sized. However, how do I just deliver to them and not to the rest of the community? You know, and at what point do they really want us in their business? At what point do they really want to start talking about food scraps? Even if they're going to save a couple $100s a month, is that really enough to get them involved in organics? Is that enough for them to engage their employees who are already burdened with a lot of the new requirements to such a degree to avoid contamination? At the end of the day, if a business is saving money on their services, but does not have properly trained teams, the contamination fees or issues alone, you know, could basically eliminate those cost savings. So all of those questions and conversations we had to engage significantly on and have dialogue on. You know, simply, okay, we're ready to roll this out, but is 15 days from a county order enough before I call somebody, or do we need 30 days or 45 days? Other questions on when and how to roll out our commercial food scrap program included, what do we call significant reopening? Do we base it off of the county orders? The county orders are not very consistent. The county orders might, you know, open up some businesses, but our largest businesses are still closed, and we don't really know when those businesses are going to be opened, and those are some of our largest generators. So how do we create an equitable system that mitigates impact of businesses, but also provides benefit as quickly as possible to businesses that need it? So what we did is we, again, extended our rollout to be a year long. We've set up our rollout to have a phase 1 and phase 2 delivery opportunity. And then we kind of have a phase 3, which is a silent waiver exemption program. And I'll talk about that just shortly. So phase 1, which commences in August, we will deliver containers to all city facilities. We're going to start with the city first, lead by example. It's approximately 25 different facilities that will receive services for the back end and will receive training for staff. And then in August, we will be delivering food scrap containers to all of our commercial cart customers. Those are customers that are smaller in nature, They have a bundled service. They originally had a trash and recycling bin. As of January, their rates were established to incorporate the cost of the food scrap bin with minimal impact. So essentially, they get their food scrap cart with no additional cost in August. So that's approximately 300 customers that will get delivered their commercial cart service. So those are some of our smaller generators, which is a unique challenge in itself. And then in August, we will be delivering containers to every business that has quote unquote right-sized or will see no additional cost. So essentially they've right-sized their services, they have cost savings, or they're in a cost neutral position. So we will be delivering food scrap containers to those businesses. The interesting component of this is the original rollout was based upon routes because every business, all 3,000 businesses across the city would receive services, and that was based upon routing through a 12-week period. We've had to work very closely with waste management. I have to give them a lot of credit because they've been very amenable and flexible to find ways to make this work. So now essentially they're going to be delivering bins across the city with no specific route plan in place because bins will be delivered based upon the actual bills and the services being ordered. So that's a little bit of a unique challenge, and I have to give a lot of credit to waste management for allowing that to happen. So again, phase 1 will be delivered to customers that have right sizing, cost saving, or cost neutrality. And then 6 months later, starting in January, we will be delivering food scrap containers to everyone else. So essentially those are businesses that maybe had a cost increase. So they were kind of that small to medium sized business that might have just had a trash bin, maybe a recycling container, and now have to take an absolute increase to just add the organics, but is unwilling to reduce the landfill services. So what our goal is we're going to use that kind of 6-month transition between phase 1 and phase 2 to reach out to those businesses a second, a third, and a fourth time to hopefully right-size their services or even consider downsizing their services. So as much as possibly feasible, at the end of the day, when the businesses receive these food scrap services, at the end of the day, the economic impact is minimal. All of that is going to take a significant increase and significant lift by all of our teams. And it's a different lift than what we originally planned, but really it's necessary when rolling out a mandatory food scrap recycling program. Another change that we've had to do in response to COVID is originally the plan was set up to do the initial face-to-face site visit, the site visit with the actual services, and then we actually had set it up to offer a third visit to provide technical assistance on food waste prevention, food recovery, as well as recycling and food scrap recycling. Because again, we want to eliminate potential issues for contamination. And we wanted this to be in line with some of the educational lifts required through SB 1383. All of that outreach has now had to be redesigned to be able to be done in a virtual essence. So instead of our zero waste technical assistance team actually visiting the businesses to provide hands-on training to the employees, we're actually in the process of developing videos, developing PowerPoints, developing scripts for interactive educational engagement on a virtual level. So that phase 2 and phase 3 visit, where we're visiting with the bins or providing additional training, is going to be offered in a virtual essence. We're going to provide businesses the option to work with us face-to-face if they would still like that as feasible within a COVID environment. But again, we're also offering businesses the opportunity to do their employee training virtually. That is the one thing that I see of a bit as a silver lining to COVID. The virtual update of all of our in-person outreach has definitely been an improvement, and I think it's actually going to expand participation. So there are businesses that just don't have the time of day to set up a meeting or meet with you in person. So a lot of those businesses have seemed really amenable and interested to taking a 5-minute training video or taking a call, a virtual Zoom call, and being provided technical assistance that way. It's a little bit easier for businesses or managers or restaurant employees to engage on that virtual sense. So we see that as actually an improvement to the original program. And lastly, this new process of a phase 1 delivery and then a phase 2 extended delayed delivery. Our original focus and the original rollout was really focused on the mandates. You are required to participate. You have cost savings. This is the right thing to do for the environment. Our new messaging, we've actually had to redesign all of our FAQs, all of our website, our letters. We're carefully crafting all of our messaging to focus this program on helping businesses first and foremost. So we're focusing our education. We're not talking about state mandates right away. Our customers do not have the appetite for mandates that are seen as, you know, an increase in costs when customers can't even pay their mortgage or their bills. We're really focusing all of our outreach on telling our customers we're here to help. Not only do we want to help right-size your services, we want to work with you to see if you need to downsize your services to best meet your needs in light of COVID. We're really mitigating the conversation around the mandates and the city's mandatory ordinance, which we established in compliance with SB 1383. So we're really focusing our team around how can we best help you? How can food scraps help you save money? You know, how can food donation help you and help your community? So that's been a really big change. To give a point of reference on the lift, the original rollout plan probably had around 50 tasks. Our new rollout plan, which is screenshotted right there on the slide, has over 100 different tasks, all of which need to be completed prior to the end of the year. After that second delivery phase, the handful of businesses that continue to refuse, we're just going to try to do some sort of administrative waiver program that is not in compliance with any of the laws. But at the end of the day, we're not going to dump bins on customers. We're not going to force them to pay something that they cannot pay. And we're just going to try to work with them as long as we can until enforcement deadlines come in through the new regulations. So I kind of put it as a joke at the end. We're really hopeful for this new program, this new rollout. We believe in it. We've put a ton of time into this new rollout. But again, at the end of the day, we have a prayer that this all works. So I think we have to keep that positive mindset after COVID. The next slide is just another example, a visual example of this new rollout program. Again, a lot of changes, but hopefully we can see improvements to it. And we're really hoping, thus far, talking with our local chamber or Main Street Association, thus far they've been very supportive because we've really held their hand throughout this, and we're continuing to work with our teams to ensure that we're here to help businesses be successful with the new recycling program. So I'll end it there for any questions.
Thanks, Colleen. Definitely super interesting times, right? We do have a few questions. We do have a few questions for you. So if you don't, and this is kind of going back to when you originally were talking about exemptions. So if you don't have exemptions, how did you deal with customers that may not have space for a bin? And I don't know, you talked a little bit about exemptions and not that you're necessarily using that word, but I think it's a little different too with people that don't have space for a bin. So I was just curious if you wanted to answer that. So
space exemptions, even in the new law, are not really clear. And we kind of dealt with this back in 2014 when we did mandatory commercial recycling in light of AB 341. The reality is California and a lot of our urban environments were not built to have massive enclosures, massive areas for bins. So we've worked with our businesses to utilize, different types of services. So if you don't have space for 3 bins, then maybe consider going to a cart system. And then we've also worked with businesses that have been really limited. We have a downtown that was built, 1910, 1920. We're working with those businesses to bring their services inside their business. But at the end of the day, there are creative ways to get around space constraints. And if we're truly going to divert these materials and reestablish services to deprioritize landfilling and prioritize recycling and organics, we have to get creative. We cannot just do blanket space exemptions because it wouldn't work. I mean, even under the new laws, if you looked at it from an architectural perspective, there's no way, I mean, literally almost half of our city could qualify under the space exemption. and then I wouldn't be able to fund a program for the whole city. So you have to kind of weigh those benefits. So we've held a pretty hard line. We are not allowing space exemptions. Instead, we're trying to work with businesses to find creative solutions. And if over time they need to build an enclosure, we're really flexible on that. We've had one business that's had a space constraint for the past 3 years, but we've spent 3 years working with them, and they finally actually just built an enclosure just over 2 months ago. And that enclosure accommodates all 3 streams. And at the end of the day, the owner is actually really happy about the enclosure and the space that he's invested in, because it's mitigated some of the public nuisances to his restaurant when he used to have bins out on the alleys or the streets. So.
Great. Do you plan on rolling out food waste collection to Oceanside School District as well?
So the school district is not run under our franchise agreement. They are separate, and right now they are out to a competitive bid, I understand. We've worked with the school district. We're encouraging them to whatever hauler they pick. We're encouraging them to incorporate organics recycling collection, and they have. They did put that within their scope. So depending on the results of that, I assume that they will have food scrap recycling in the next year to 2 years. That has been something the city has informally worked with them to be able to facilitate in line with the laws coming down.
So another question here, how many people are on the team to provide support and roll out the program?
Excellent question. So the way we've done this rollout in particular is we, within that contract amendment, we went ahead and put in a budget for that contract amendment for outreach and technical support. That has enabled Waste Management to procure SCS and Go to Zero to provide their zero waste technical assistance team. I've got my full team working on this rollout, including myself. I get all the angry calls at the end of the day, and I get to deal with kind of the administration and management of the whole thing. So my team right now, this is actually another COVID kind of related issue. My team prior to COVID had 2 full-time employees and a full-time supervisor position underneath my position. Right before COVID hit, my supervisor, who is phenomenal, was promoted to run another environmental division. Very happy for her, crying for myself. So that's been a major hit, and I'm not sure how soon we'll be able to fill that vacancy, because vacancies have been frozen in response to COVID. So that's the internal city team. The consultant team, kind of, Tracy, can you help on that, the range of team members throughout this process?
Yeah, so myself as project management and helping with whatever way, and then we've got 2 full-time, well, actually 3 full-time staff working around the clock, and then we have 2 or 3 others that come in depending on what the need are, that can float between a quarter to a half time as well.
And just to give a point of reference, and I think this is important, we talk about this is why I also asked the question earlier of Culver City, is that's the staffing resources just to do what we're trying to do now. And we're trying to stretch those staffing resources, because again, we went from a 4-month rollout to a year rollout. Those resources will not be enough to do what we need to do to expand this program and add a residential program, as well as all the new various requirements of SB 1383. So initial studies for staffing needs over the next year to 3 years. I'm looking at literally an additional 5 to 6 more staff needs, over $500,000 worth of staffing needs. And looking at the economic situation we're in regards to COVID, and the politics surrounding that, and whether customers really are up for seeing rate increases or more PERS liability, the future looks bleak in being able to increase the size of my team. And the future actually may look at decreases, and that's concerning, because this program as a whole, even this year, is taking all of my team members way beyond what I call a 50-hour work week.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much. That was super interesting. Appreciate you presenting. And just one last thanks to Kim, Dave, and Colleen for taking the time today to help us navigate COVID and re-entry. Just one thing, as Despina just put up, we have our conference August 16th, 19th. It is virtual this year. We have a couple more weeks with early bird rates, so make sure you sign up. And if you have any questions, let us know. And with that, stay safe out there and take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank
Have a great
you.
day.